What is something that happens at casinos that's hidden from the public? Old people dying. I knew a couple who worked the cage and the floor at a Hard Rock, and they used to tell me stories about this. When they found someone dead at a machine, they'd quietly get them into a wheelchair, put a blanket over them, and roll them out the back to a waiting ambulance. They also talked about how often people would unalive themselves. One guy climbed the safety fence and jumped off the top of the parking garage, and they found a lot of people dead in their bathtub in various ways. That, and watching someone bet and lose the same amount as my student loans in about 5 minutes, absolutely ruined casinos for me. They just depressed the crap out of me. So I think that this again speaks to the hazards of gambling and why you should either not do it or gamble responsibly. Losing your life savings and going tens of thousands into debt, I can see how people can feel hopeless in situations like that. I'm speaking of the younger folks and not the older ones. So yeah, please take this as yet another reminder to gamble responsibly or not at all. You'll be okay without that extra money. Story 2. Self-unalivings. Properties go to great lengths to hide these events from the public, given how bad for business it is, but it happens and quickly taken care of. It's a very open but grim secret amongst casino workers, apparently. Story 3. I wandered down to the basement of MGM from a truck ramp, and man, it was like a whole city down there. Imagine a massive warehouse with roads and offices and supplies everywhere. The opposite of the glitz going on above it. Story 5. My wife is friends with a lady whose husband drives VIPs around for a casino. The top guys get assigned a special room with their own private butler. They might be gambling $100K a hand and tipping $5K for drinks, rides, etc. This reminded me of a story I heard when I was living in Australia. At the time, one of the richest guys in Australia was Kerry Packer. Old man Packer liked to gamble and would regularly fly to Vegas and gamble huge. I dated a girl at the time who was a dealer in one of his casinos and said he was known to tip big, and once had asked a cocktail waitress how much she had left on her mortgage and tipped her that much. Several years later, I was in Vegas talking to a pit boss and was relaying this story, and without missing a beat, he said, "That's a true story." Story 6. How much money goes unclaimed and uncollected? I worked in the accounting department at one of my main gaming conglomerates and was tasked with cleaning up their unclaimed property accounts. There were players, aka whales, who deposited millions and just forgot about it for years. Must be nice, just saying, to be able to just casually deposit a couple $1,000,000 and forget all about it. Who misses that? Story 8. I'm not sure about Western casinos, but this is for Asian casinos. Asians generally subscribe to the supernatural and definitely the superstitions that go along with gambling. Casino owners tend to hire ghost babies, toils or kumantongs, aborted baby spirits, to kind of curse players into losing. Superstitious players will bring candies, toss them under tables so the ghost babies leave them alone because of the candy bribe and let them win. Story 9. A couple are not hidden, but not obvious to the average casino goer. Some casinos add scents to the air. They do not pump in extra oxygen in, as some people believe. They also keep the temperatures on the cool side to keep people from getting sleepy. No clocks on the walls, and in general, no windows with views to the outside. Story 10. Used to be a blackjack dealer in Nevada. To me, the most disgusting thing was watching people I knew who were struggling to feed their families come in and feed their entire paycheck into a slot machine or gaming table. And I was never allowed to say anything, not on or off the job. I ended up quitting as it was so depressing. So again, I understand the conflict of interest of saying something on the job, but why can't you say anything off the job? If you know the answer to that question, please educate me down below. Not hating, just want to know. Story 11. You won't find clocks on the walls. Dealers are generally forbidden from wearing watches, and the vast majority of casinos do not have windows to the outside. The few you can, maybe from the floor, are usually heavily tinted, and the lighting inside generally stays the same 24/7. This is because they limit your ability to tell time as much as possible, to the extent they can control, so that you're more likely to lose track and stay longer. The longer you play, the better the odds of losing, because the odds are always in the house's favor. Any game that requires some version of commission for a wager, banker and back, means that the odds are either even or ever so slightly in favor of that wager, so they add a commission to even it back out. No game added to the floor is random. All the odds are figured out way before it's ever even considered being offered from sale. The bonus sounds on slot machines are bullcrap. The outcome is determined, and no matter what you do in that bonus, you'll get the amount the machine has determined for that jackpot. Slot machines are the adult equivalent of those infant toys that light up and make sounds when played with some added psychology. Bet 100, spin, you won 60. No, dumbass, you lost 40 and got to watch some lights and listen to some sounds. I can almost always tell a high roller slots player based on their decision to have taxes withheld from large jackpots. The big fish know they'll likely break even over the course of a year at best and won't owe anything. Casinos are regulated like banks and report financial transactions just like banks. Don't want to give an ID for that $10,000 in chips you're trying to cash? You'll be refused. Multiple transactions that add up to $10,000? ID, please. Try to beat the system by structuring, having a friend cash out, etc. Gonna report you to the government for possible money laundering activity. We can see every slot machine screen and table game on camera, 24/7. You break something, like punching the screen, which is more common than you think, we'll ID you and you'll get a bill. Also, probably evicted. ETA, if you take away nothing from any of my comments in here, know this. The only way to guarantee you walk out of a casino with more money than you went in with without committing a crime is to work there. No, counting cards is not a guarantee, but it is legal. That said, you aren't Tommy Highland. Unless Tommy's on Reddit, then okay, one of you is Tommy. I'd love to chat in person sometime. Working there has cured me of ever wanting to go there for fun. I can drink, smoke, and play poker at home. Story 12. Robberies and murders. The father of a friend of mine was robbed, stabbed, and killed in the parkade of a local casino in the late 90s after he won big. It never made the news, and a friend of mine who worked at the same casino 5 years later swore I was making it up because she had never heard anything about it. After talking to a few security guys, she finally had someone give her an off-the-record, wink-nod confirmation that it did happen, but they went the extra mile to keep the story buried. Story 13. If you like to play slot machines, never play penny slots. Those are the machines that make the casinos their most money. Play quarter and dollar machines, you spend just as much or less each spin, and they tend to have better payouts. But your brain says penny slots are cheaper, but they have machines that you can hit $20 a spin and higher. Where I used to work, penny machines had a 14% hold, while quarter and dollar machines had an 8% hold. The hold is how much the machine will win over the lifetime of the machine. The higher the hold, the more likely you are not to win. Also, a machine is never due. They use random number generators that act the moment you hit the spin button or pull the arm. The machine already knows if you've won or not, and everything you see in front of you is for your entertainment. Always use your player's card. Yes, they track your play and try to lure you back based on how you play, but it's also how they determine if they give you things. Every casino has its own scent. They want you to associate that smell with the casino subconsciously. It's like going to the movies and you smell the popcorn and your brain is ready for the experience. Story 14. My cousin works at a casino, and depending on what table he's working, requires a uniform, vest, cucumber, tie, clip change. There's a large employee room with hundreds of lockers. He shares his with two others that usually work different shifts and areas than him. In the locker are 6 hooks, 2 for each person, a top cubby with 3 sections for water bottles, etc., a lower section with 3 sections for boots and change clothes, and above the footwear section, a 3-section mini locker that you bring your own lock, where you put your wallet, valuables, etc. that you can't have on your person when you're on the floor. The lockers are large enough to keep your section closed if you want to swap during your shift. He only very rarely runs into a locker buddy, unless they've picked up an extra shift or if there's a special event. He's super short, and his locker mates are a very tall man and an average height woman. He thinks locker mates are chosen very specifically to avoid thefts, minimal contact, etc., though he can't prove that. Story 15. Not totally hidden from the public scene, since I, a member of the public, was shown it, but major casinos in Vegas have an armory room, stockpiles of weapons and tactical gear. Was staying at a casino on the main strip, and had a number of guns with me for a meetup at a nearby shooting range, and asked the front desk if they had somewhere I could keep them, since I didn't really like the idea of leaving them unattended in my room or car. A security guy came out and said, "Follow me to the armory," and led me to an extremely secure room full of all kinds of rifles and vests and whatnot, pointed to an empty locking cabinet I could put my stuff in, and gave me a claim ticket to pick them back up again later. Story 16. I worked at a casino. Well, the resort portion of the casino for a summer. I don't have any sordid secrets, but general interesting things I learned. The security cameras are very good, like can read your name off your badge hanging off your waist good. You aren't doing a damn thing the camera can't see. At this casino, employees were required to wear badges clearly visible at all times when on the premises, even if not on the clock. Escorting your grandma to the bingo hall after your shift? Badge still better be visible. In the parking lot? Badge still better be visible. At this casino, employees were only allowed to gamble there one day a month. You'd think it'd be money right back into the casino's pocket, but they didn't want the risk of an employee being heavily in debt, which leads to the next point. Anyone getting a job within the casino itself is getting background checked, especially for bad credit and outstanding debts. If you're a guy down on his luck with some maxed out credit cards and you want a job to get back on your feet, the casino doesn't want you. You're a liability. You're not worth the risk. All the cash goes into the vault. I assume it's a literal bank vault, but I've never seen the vault. Most employees have never seen the vault. You don't F around when it comes to the vault. You better have a real good reason why you're approaching the vault. Security will turn your ass around and send you on your way, and you'll probably be flagged for questioning. People don't just stumble onto the vault. You end up there knowingly, and unless you are specifically, by name, called to the vault, or you have an urgent reason for being at the vault, for which you've already radioed ahead, showing up at the vault is a red flag. The community is going to have a two-sided relationship with the casino. This casino was on a reservation. Older generations see the casino as a chance to reinvest in the community, and it really does. Community centers, libraries, etc., all paid for directly by the casino. I've never spoken to the tribe elders, but I have spoken to older people, and they all see opportunities for better lives for their kids and grandkids thanks to the casino. Younger generations suffer from some of the worst entitlement I've seen because of the casino. I can't tell you how many times in one summer I heard, "My family owns this casino. My family owns you. I can do what I want." Official policy was no one gets special treatment, even res kids. In practice, a lot of blind eyes get turned for people from the res. Obviously, not when it comes to any gambling. That crap's a zero tolerance policy. But the resort, bowling alley, movie theater that were owned and operated by the casino? It's a shame seeing the older generation look at the casino as a blessing to their people, and younger people seeing it as a place where rules don't apply to them because their granduncle is an elder or something. Story 17. Not sure about the Nevada casinos, but at Indian casinos, the majority of the workers are heavy gamblers, and there's a lot of sex going on amongst the workers. So that directly goes against what we learned about the underbelly in Story 16, so yeah, I guess they're just run totally differently in India. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing. Story 18. I only have the one experience that likely doesn't qualify because I still have no idea what was happening or why. I was collecting water samples at a major casino/hotel for Legionella testing, a big deal for any hospitality type industry. They were diligent and had consistently good results, just FYI. We were down on the floor with the villas. We'd already passed a couple levels of security. The presidential suite was empty. We were given a key and took our time. But when we were halfway down a hallway for the villas, two very large men in suits, I'm a fairly well-built man, but I understood my place at that moment, came up and angrily asked for verification and then radioed in our credentials. They very bluntly told hotel security that they were meant to have complete privacy. Once they were clear, they told us to mind our business and move on quickly. A third, very angry, albeit very well-dressed giant of a man walked out of a room as we walked by. What I saw was a giant U-shaped sectional sofa with a couple dozen or more elderly men in suits. Behind each man was a beautiful, very scantily dressed, much younger woman. They all stared blankly at me and my coworker as we passed. We were told to get the F out of there in a way that we, with puckered buttholes, listened to. Bizarre experience, but I thought it basically confirmed what I thought about Vegas. Story 19. In Atlantic City, there are a lot of unused stairwells and corridors, especially now that the casinos are not as busy. Many homeless people find their way into them and live. A friend of mine told me about a time they were using a stairwell to move furniture and drywall for a remodel. They found 2 landings with beds and clothing there, and one resident claimed he had been there for over a year. Story 20. When I was in college, I read Fools Die by Mario Puzo. It's about the casino industry and specifically about the security at casinos. My friend's uncle was the head of security at a casino, and we went to meet him at his job. I was really excited to actually see what I had read about. He was nice enough to meet with us, but one of the first things he said was, "Of course I can't show you any of the security, because that's confidential." Sucked. Story 21. In Las Vegas, the sheer amount of data that's collected and analyzed on everything, from the weekend traffic coming from LA, the demographics going to see a concert or show, and how that impacts staffing, everything about your slot or table play, down to the size of the pans used in a buffet relate to food waste. Story 22. All of the pissing and crapping stories makes me think about a time that I was at the Cosmo in Las Vegas. I was playing a slot machine and really had to pee and was going through the last few spins when, bam, I won $200-ish. I pressed the button for the little paper winnings thing to come out, and the screen said attendant called. I waited and almost pissed myself until they finally came and paid me. I struggled with the do I piss myself dilemma. If I was staying at the hotel and could have gotten showered and changed, I might have. Okay, so question for the audience. Is $200 worth publicly pissing yourself? I know what my answer is, but I want to know what yours is. Answer down below, please. Story 23. Not sure about all the casinos, but security banging the restaurant girls was pretty common where I worked. Manager of the restaurant got fired for having sex in the back on the prep table. Apparently, there are lots of cameras in casinos. Who knew? Story 24. I used to work at an Indian casino who was a customer of ours. The tribe takes their cut and basically don't work or even show up. A few of the kids were given token jobs like security, but just sit in the booth not actively doing anything. Everyone else who had to pick up the slack hated them. The main board is called the Tribal Council, and although they had primo parking spots, they never showed up when I was there. I sold to their IT department and, as a whole, was shocked how much access they had to all the systems. We could pull up real-time slot machine traffic and payouts. We could access everyone the security cameras picked up. Anybody with a player's card, we could track their movements and winnings. Anybody staying at the hotel, they knew everything about them and their spouses. Story 25. Burglaries of the rooms. I was staying at the Four Queens downtown many years ago, and my room was burglarized in what was clearly an inside job. Housekeeping had cased the room. They picked which bags had which items at the time. Then, when the burglary happened later that evening, they ignored much more valuable items in bags that had not arrived until later and were not part of the initial scan. They then tried to extort us after calling later at night. Management would not provide video, call logs, or other data and was totally useless, as interestingly was LVPD. Never in my life has it been clear that something was organized crime. Story 26. Former addict, I spent days and days on end inside casinos. They're amazing and wonderful, and I still love them. Just in my few months there, I saw 4 deaths, all heart attacks. I think all of them are in unsettled hours, like 4 a.m. They put a portable curtain around the perished, and the emergency people do what they need to do. The security gets very defensive with anyone coming near the curtains. One of my friends unalived himself after losing tens of thousands several nights on end. Good man. Heart of gold, miss him so much. That's what got me to stop. The addiction part is what's not fun. Story 27. I worked at MGM for a while. Overall, it sucked, to be honest, but I will say they had an incredible break room. Like full-on restaurant-quality food for us, no charge. Even cooks you could custom order sandwiches from if you didn't want the meals on offer for that night. I put on a bit of weight working there. On extremely gluttonous days, I would get to work, eat some corn or clam chowder before work, break time, full meal of like meat, potatoes, veggies, etc. Then at the end of my shift around 8 a.m., could even go in again and have pancakes and bacon. Just ridiculous, honestly. I'm talking real food. Don't imagine microwave stuff. Story 28. Self-unalivings are a big one. There's a certain town within a certain falls and a casino that has connections with local media to not report on people jumping over the edge to self-unaliving because they ruin their life at the casino. To say nothing of the broke people who lost everything, trying to hitch a free ride back to the big city. In big ones, there's a guy whose job it is to pick up high rollers at the airport, wait on them at every moment, give them the luxury penthouse suite at the hotel, etc. They do this to make them feel important, and they know it's an investment. They get these guys to spend insane amounts of money. Louis Theroux has a good documentary on this. Story 29. When I worked at a tribal casino for 2 different positions, I went through orientation for each time. I remember we were told that it was encouraged to befriend the customers who frequent the casino a lot. This includes trying to figure out why they have so much money. Also, the application to this casino stated that they preferred to hire those who were Native American. I'm a member of the tribe, despite being very white, so I don't know if I was picked for my papers, but whatever. Don't work at a casino, people. They profit off of vices. Story 30. Casino employee here. A little about me. I was a dealer for 14 years, across 3 properties across the country. Now I'm a pit manager. Couple of things. If you see a door in the bathroom painted the same color as the walls, it's for security. They enter through that door to rescue anybody who ODs, where we have a paramedic station. If the power goes out, we have generators. However, our power comes back on before the hospital. Self-unalivings are more frequent than you think at casinos, whether it's in their own vehicle or outside or on the gaming floor. Card counting is not illegal. However, most who think they can't, and the ones who can't manage a bankroll, thus we rarely have issues. Feel free to ask me anything. Story 31. I worked at casinos on the Strip in the 90s. The stuff that the eyes, security cameras, catch during the adult content convention surprised me, and I was pleasantly surprised that the adult content industry folks were the nicest, most polite customers and tons of fun to serve because they had such a great time and treated staff very well. Story 32. The amount of people who got their car repossessed. They come to security thinking their car got stolen. The company will call us out to courtesy to let us know they took someone's vehicle. Can't pay their car payment, but come gamble for hours. Story 33. Secret VIP doors. I used to hang with high rollers. If you wagered over about $400K a year at the casino, you're given a VIP card to access private rooms and lounges. Randomly, next to a slot machine in the wall would be a card reader. Even if you did see it, you might assume it's a staff area, but in reality, it was a VIP lounge. One door opens to a huge balcony overlooking the lobby. Full bar, food, and private staff that will take care of you. Story 34. I worked at a racetrack/casino for a summer, and what surprised me the most was how intense the hiring and training process was. I knew there would be a background check and drug test, but I also had to get certified by my state's Racing and Games Commission. It wasn't a difficult process, but it took forever, and they took my fingerprints, which I thought was weird. It was basically like I was getting security clearance, and everyone who worked there had to do it, even if they were working at the adjoining hotel and never stepped foot into the actual casino. Once I got hired, I had to watch a bunch of orientation videos that were required by the state or federal government. One was about recognizing the signs of gambling addiction and when to intervene with guests who showed these signs, like how bartenders have to cut people off. It was pretty obvious that they only showed that video because they had to, and they didn't want us to cut off their best customers. And then there was a PowerPoint and quiz mandated by a federal agency, either the FBI, IRS, or SEC, I can't remember, about fraud and tax evasion. Basically, if someone won over a certain amount, I think $5,000, in one day they had to report their winnings to the IRS before they could leave with their money. And there were ways that people tried to game the system to get out of paying taxes, like they would cash out just under the threshold. So if the $5,000 number was correct, they would cash out at $49.99 and wait to collect more until the next day. So either they do a transaction before midnight and another after, or they take their chips home to bring back later, or they could get other people to collect money for them. So casino staff was supposed to be on lookout for any sort of shady behavior that could be tax avoidance. And if you had suspicions but no proof, they had a computer program for you to input profiles with any details you could gather. Name, physical description, amount won, so security could keep an eye out. I never had to do this since I worked at the racetrack, and not the actual casino, but it was crazy to me that the dealers and other casino employees had to worry about all that on top of their regular job duties. The pay was pretty good, but not enough for investigating financial crimes, IMO. Story 35. The large and growing binders filled with homes and properties that casinos end up owning because people are so sure they're going to win, they borrow against their mortgage and lose. A friend of mine's wife was an EA for the head of finance at a local casino and mentioned to her that he doesn't want to be in the real estate business, as they had hundreds of mortgages in those binders they needed to clear, sell, and escrow away. from people who couldn't pay their debts. For casinos on Native American grounds, the amount of essay that happens against female staff by male elders, who are apparently immune to prosecution on their own lands. They just terminate the workers who even hint at filing complaints, because those labor laws can't be enforced on their lands. I've heard firsthand about grabbing stories where the waitresses have to just deal with it, or they can leave, or be shown the door. The sheer amount of stealthy surveillance and tracking the moment you walk in the door. They know based on the NFC in the casino card they mailed you the moment you walk in. They have your name, age, income, and where you are in the casino. They'll route people out to find you by name and upgrade your card to allow you greater use of the facilities. This all happens well before advanced facial recognition starts mapping your movements through the gaming floors. Story 36. If a death occurred in a casino or a casino hotel resort, the time of death cannot be declared until it's off the property, at the hospital, or on arrival. This spans from peaceful deaths during sleep or after scraping the body off the pool deck after the person jumped from above. The last thing casinos want is the number of deaths, or rather self-unalivings, officially linked to them. Story 37. Worked for a tribal council, but heard stories from the casino. Typical tribal members drunk and going into the casinos and telling all the white employees they own them. Also at this casino, tribal members received a 4 to 5 figure check per month just for being a member and having a casino. Tons of women showing up claiming to have tribal babies for the money, and they hated other tribes, especially the poor ones. Story 38. My partner worked at a casino for 7 years. Honestly, a lot of rumors are completely fake. There were no secret entrances and bathrooms to sneak out deceased patrons, no small rooms for kneecapping, no big vault full of a day's potential payouts in cash. What's something that isn't strictly hidden but very clearly considered? Note, this is Australia, where there are very few casinos, but the ones are massive. The fact that there are so many staff, from dealers to cleaners to kitchen hands, the mortality rate of staff is high. When you have 5 times the amount of staff, 5 times the amount of staff die while employed. Seems innocuous in percentages, but when you start using numbers, it gets alarming. I'm not sure if it's confirmation bias or another term, but it's a fun way to shock people at parties. Story 39. Prostitution. Not talking Nevada. Washington state casinos run by Vegas companies in small towns on reservations. Does not help the communities they're in. Many work there for minimum wage and gamble away their meager earnings. Meth and fentanyl are rampant and trafficked on the premises. Story 40. Here in Australia, it's money laundering. Any gambling wins here are tax-free, so you've got crap loads of dirty cash and you need to clean it. Go to any pub, club, casino, etc., and start feeding your ill-gotten gains into a pokey machine, press collect, and hey, presto, clean money. You don't even need to play, just collect tax-free cash. Story 41. I don't know if this is still done, but many years ago, I worked at Sahara Tahoe, and in our paycheck envelopes, the management would put 5 drink tokes that were good for 5 free drinks. It was introduced as an employee benefit, but you could only use the drink tokes in the casino bars, not in the restaurant or the hotel bars. Now, here's the kicker. If you cashed your paycheck at a casino cashier, again, not at any of the hotel or restaurant cashiers, they would give you 10 more drink tokes. So what you would have on payday is many of the staff with a bunch of drinks under their belt and thousands of dollars in their pockets wandering around the casino. It wasn't hard to see what the hotel wanted us to do with the cash. Story 42. Oh, my time to shine. There was a glass in one of our sauces in the restaurant I worked in at the casino. Oh, and the surveillance is insane. Even when I worked there 15 years ago, it was super detailed, top-of-the-line tech. I worked in a casino for 3 years in one of their restaurants. We left a dead guy and just closed the bar he died in, left the rest of the place open, and redirected guests who wanted to sit at a bar to the restaurant. Oh, also, the time one woman got angry and crapped across the whole casino. They had to block it off for like a week so they could replace the carpet. She was so angry at losing all her money, she dropped her pants and crapped a line across the carpet. So, 2 things. 1, I would much rather you do this than unalive yourself. And 2, what in the world did she eat if they had to shut it down for over a week? Like, how was the carpet that destroyed? Story 43. Robbery, stabbings, urinating and defecating wherever you are because you don't want to vacate your pokey machine, sit at the table, or whatever. Don't let old toothless charming Cyril fool you. He'll stab you and or steal your money. People lining up to get into the casino on the twice-a-year 12-hour closures like it's Boxing Day sales opening. It's amazing what people would do for money. Source: me, ex-gaming inspector. Story 44. Every casino has its own scent. You're not kidding. In Vegas, Mandalay Bay smells lovely when you step off the tram. Beachy, suntan lotiony, and then if you get back on the tram over to Excalibur, it smells like a wet dog washed in cough syrup. Story 45. In a very literal sense, all the offices and office workers. The lower levels of a casino are typically filled with gambling areas and shops. The outsides of the upper levels are covered in rooms for the views. But what's in the middle of the upper levels? Any office workers get those windowless spaces. You might think that casino corporate offices are all snazzy and fun, but they're very typically very dull, normal office spaces. The complete lack of natural light can get quite depressing. In one casino I worked in for a while, the only corporate office with a window was the CEO's office. Every other windowed space was too valuable to spend on an employee, even at the C-suite, unless you had the fortune to work off-site at a dedicated office building. Story 46. If you're on a roll and someone shows up to make a really weird bet that F's up the flow of your winning, it's probably someone on the casino's payroll that's been sent over to F you over so that the casino doesn't have to pay you out. Story 47. I worked in a casino for a couple years in Scotland, and there's a whole database on the customers. What you wear, who you talk to, what your hair looks like. Also, if we didn't know your name and we had to put you in the machine next to us, sometimes we'd just call you Twat1 or man with awful hair. Story 48. There are secret hidden doors that security uses to quickly get in and out to address issues without creating too much of a scene. I was at Foxwoods one time with a few friends just getting burgers at 2 a.m. after working 16 hours straight. It was the only place open at the time. We're sitting there eating and two groups meet up in front of us and start fighting. It was Jersey Shore type Guidos versus the White Thug rapper bunch. It started out as an unintelligible word battles and turned into popped collars and shoving, then punches and throws. One security guy showed up almost out of thin air. I took a bite of burger, looked up, and now there's 5 security guys. I took another bite, looked up, and everyone is gone. Vanished. The decorative mural behind them was a hidden door. Story 49. Parents lived outside Vegas and had an event at their retirement community with a retired casino security guy from the 1960s. One guy asked him, "What if you catch someone cheating?" And he said, "We politely asked them to leave. And if they came back in again, we took them out back and beat the crap hell out of them." Story 50. A lot of stuff here is very region specific, so take a lot of what you read with a heavy grain of salt. Unethical hold percentages, lack of security through least privilege, etc. aren't happening universally. Something I haven't seen, though, that isn't well known is that depending on where you live, gambling bodies are legally required to respond to FOIA requests that will detail your entire carded gambling history. It's easily initiated and can be an interesting thing to see, or a useful way to have someone with a gambling addiction see the raw numbers. Story 51. The amount of video cameras and the quality of video is insane. I used to work for a big camera manufacturer, and most of the cameras are 4K and have an insane amount of zoom. They can see everything. Story 52. People taking their own life. I was at the Cosmo for 4 days and surprised at the balconies high up in the tower. Lo and behold, we find out the next morning that a young man from Jersey, having gambled all his money and hope away, threw himself off a balcony. The casinos have crews to keep these events as clean and quiet and out of the news as possible. Story 53. Grandmoms leaving kids in the car. Back in 1993, me, my 2 sisters, and my cousin, all around 9 years old, went to the casino with Granny. She lived in Niagara Falls, and we were in town visiting her. All of us grandkids lived out of state. We sat in the car in the winter while she went in to gamble for about an hour. We took the heads off the car seats in her pink Toyota Corolla and fought each other with those. She finally came back and told us not to tell our parents. Of course we did. I thought my dad was going to kill Granny. Story 54. I got my hospitality degree in Nevada, and one of the things they said about casinos has always stuck with me. There's only 2 kinds of people casinos don't trust: their customers and their employees. Also, gambling addicts can register with either the casino or the state to not be allowed in casinos, but they don't really prevent you from coming in the casino. They just prevent you from cashing out if you win. Story 55. Years ago, someone at a local riverboat casino proposed putting childcare into the casinos after somebody found 3 preschool-age siblings playing on the riverbank in the middle of the night. The parents had locked the car with them asleep in their car seats, and they had awakened, unbuckled the seats, and unlocked the car and gotten out. For the employees, that I wouldn't have much of a problem with, but the customers? No, 1,000 times no. That's not the casino's responsibility. Story 56. If they cart someone getting CPR off the floor on a gurney, it's probably because they're already dead, and they're moving it before stopping resuscitation efforts so the medical examiner can come pronounce them dead in a hallway instead of leaving the body lying on the gaming floor. I worked at a casino when that happened, and they didn't realize they couldn't move the body once they stopped trying to revive them. Had to put guards around it for 6 hours to keep people from literally standing over the dead person to play on a specific slot. Story 57. I'm close to and worked at a large casino resort on a reservation with a golf course. You don't hear about the people dying on the property or the circumstances around them. The reservation has their own department of sheriffs, so they decide when and if to communicate about them. That, mixed with the location in the middle of nowhere and the high-profile clients that went there, some shady crap has definitely gone down. Not as spicy, but they have a high-tech AC airflow system that makes it so cigarette smoke is barely noticeable. As much money as they have, they're still shisty and money-grabbing as crap. It was common for them to appeal valid unemployment claims, which was like pocket change. I had to go to court to have my case heard, but won, luckily. Story 58. The individual person tracking systems are very impressive. They use facial recognition software in doorways and threshold frames, even going into the bathrooms. Look for little circles in the door frames or on signs on the walls. Enhanced forensic metadata analytics are capable of finding individual people easily throughout their entire time on site. With a simple scan, they can find everywhere you were in their casino and serve it up on a platter. You're never alone in a casino. Story 59. Casino dealer here, Louisiana, dealing a jammed-up dice game, had 12 people on just my side of the table, probably another 10 on the other side. We hit the bonus. A man literally cheers and falls out, having a heart attack. Players immediately rush to his empty spot trying to buy in. The pit boss literally yelled at them that if they don't back away from the man on the floor, he was shutting down the entire table. The players wouldn't even let security by to grab the man to attempt to save his life. He died on the floor next to table 115, surrounded by strangers who were hoping to replace him. It's disgusting. That's what they don't tell you. Same table, a different night, a guest proceeded to piss into a cup under the table so he didn't have to walk off during the busy roll. Beverage came by to grab cups and noticed how warm the beer was, and that's when they knew. Checked cameras and arrested him for public indecency. The people are the worst part of the job. Both disgusting displays of general humanity, stepping over a dead man to take his spot at the table and then pissing into a cup because you didn't want to leave and potentially miss out on a few extra bucks. That's ick. Story 60. My father briefly did business with a company that made slot machines. It turns out that they're even more rigged than you think. Like, they're literally hardwired to only ever give back 70% of the money they receive, or something like that. My father decided to never have anything to do with the gambling industry again, after he found this out. We all know that slot machines and similar are rigged, but so many people seem to think that they still have a chance to win, and so on. If you play a slot machine for any prolonged period of time, you're basically guaranteed to overall lose money. Story 61. Cashier cages get robbed all the time, but this gets swept under the rug as much as possible to avoid scaring away customers. They keep a stack specifically for that purpose, to get them out quick. Also, people who win jackpots and take cash get followed out of the casino and robbed all the time. Story 62. In the basement tunnels and hallways that everyone else is going on about, human hands are ripping open every garbage bag to sort through for recyclables and stuff. That thing you tried hiding, we found it, all wrapped up, in the weird bathroom. The thing you tried to hide, we know. It happens more often than you think. You're not alone, weirdo. Story 63. I was in the casino business for over 20 years, pretty high up in management. Just when you think you've seen it all, something will happen that's so incredibly crazy. The people crapping, peeing, puking, spitting on the floor happens constantly. Employees hooking up, people doing it in cars and ramp. By the way, surveillance can see everything, including white powder lines on the dashboard. Service animals, peeing, etc. Employee theft, people getting arrested and dragged out in handcuffs, fights, stabbings, death. Story 64. Ex-casino employee here. There are cameras everywhere, both in front of house, casino floor, restaurants, etc., and back of house, kitchens, offices, etc. The only places where there aren't cameras are the bathrooms and the employee changing rooms, and the wardrobe room where the employees get fitted for their uniforms. Others have mentioned people peeing or crapping on themselves. However, there are also pregnant women whose water will break and they'll refuse to go to the hospital. This has happened more than once at the casino I work cage at. The amount of times a slot machine had to be taken out to be repaired because someone put holy water on it, that happened a lot.